maybe someone will carve your tombstone out of a clear block of ice.
Oh, that would be great. It would be like the eternal flame, but the eternal cube.
Oh my God. That's it. All right. We got to start working on this, not to be morbid or anything. So, Camper, you are very well known for your ice experiments, especially this method called directional freezing. In fact, that is my most popular video on my channel. It's got over 1 million views, and it's basically just recreating the method that you basically made everyone aware of. So you want to talk a bit about that?
Sure. I mean, so many more people are aware of it just because of your video than they were because of my website where I first published it, now going on 7.5 years or so. So I was interested in making clear ice, and I had heard a lot of information that didn't sound super scientifically accurate about it, and so I tried to replicate what other people were doing, see if it truly made clear or more clear ice, and then as those didn't work as I sort of expected, to try to come up with my own way that you could make clear ice without specialty machines or anything like that. And after 9 months or so, I finally figured it out.
Wow, 9 months. What were some of the failed experiments along the way on that method?
Well, I started first, of course, with boiling the water, because I feel like we all know that you boil the water to make clear ice. But if you've ever tried it, you know it doesn't work.
Yeah, yes.
Maybe it helps, but not enough compared to anything else. So I tried boiling the water. I tried making ice and then letting it melt and refreezing it, which was what some bartenders were doing at the time. And I did that, I think, 13 times again and again. And then we would take a picture of the ice to show that it wasn't getting any more clear. Yeah. So, and I tried freezing in like really small layers, so there would be no cloudy part. That didn't work. It was just a layer of cloudy clear, and all sorts of different sort of shapes of containers and stuff, which is eventually what sort of led me to the directional freezing concept, which was because ice, the center of the ice cube is usually the cloudy part, as you know, and because of ice is freezing from the outside in, from the cold part to the warmest part in the middle. And so if you just change the direction of how it freezes, you can put the cloudy part where you want it. So that technique was just to throw water in a cooler and leave the top off, as we've all seen on your channel.
Yeah, that's the method I find the easiest, and it is just a $15, off Amazon.com like cooler, and fill it up, freeze from the top down, and then hack it off. It is pretty simple, and that is the number one comment I get whenever I post that anywhere is, doesn't this work if I just boil the water? Why do I need to go through all this labor? And it's, like you said, it helps a little bit, especially if you have maybe some impure water, but but you're not going to get that pure sort of clarity. In fact, I think even this drink, we're drinking gin and tonics here, and these little ice spears were actually made using your method, and they are pretty clear.
Yeah, it's nice ice. It's only cloudy because of the lime juice.
Correct.
Fans at home.
Good correction.
Yeah, I also have obsessively clear ice at home. Always doing some projects and breaking it up, and now I find great joy in the act of smashing up an ice block with a big heavy ice pick once every week or day, depending on how much I'm digging.
Or how bad of a day you had. It's great for taking out your frustration on that big block of ice.
It is fun stuff.
Yeah. Where did your fascination with ice come from?
Well, it came from the what I thought was bad science that I was hearing about it. And in the bar world, especially 10 years ago, there was a lot of still hearsay in the bartending world. Why you shake versus stir, how to make clear ice, and how to get the frothiest drink, etc. So some people, self-included, started doing more sort of scientific testing to see, okay, we know this is how it works, but let's just prove that, and then we can move on from there. So it's been a great amount of fun science to do at home with a drink at the end. So that's how I got into it. And now it's sort of, because I, sussed out that the directional freezing thing, that was successful. And now I'm trying everything. It's fun.
Great. Yeah. What kind of experiments are you up to these days with ice?
Well, now I'm sort of freezing everything I can inside of ice cubes. I've been doing a lot of clear ice balls with edible flowers or citrus fruits, strawberries frozen in the middle, things like that. That's been really fun.
Yes, I've been seeing you post a lot of those on Instagram. They're very cool. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, and it's it's an easy way to get a lot of likes on Instagram to have like really sexy ice pictures.
People love clear ice. They fucking love it.
They do. Can't blame them.
So, so that will be a big legacy that you will leave in the cocktail world, especially for the home bartenders.
Right. So as soon as I'm dead, you'll be you can take that for yourself. Legacy.
Put that on your tombstone. Maybe someone will carve your tombstone out of a clear block of ice.
Oh, that would be great. It would be like the eternal flame, but the eternal cube.
Oh my God. That's it. All right. We got to start working on this, not to be morbid or anything. I want to talk about your career, because your career goes well beyond just your clear ice experiments, but you've done a ton of experiments. Why don't you talk about how you even got started as a cocktail writer and sort of your entrance into the cocktail world?
Sure. Well, I was drinking a lot and found a way to get paid. The short version, but really, I had a job in tech in the late '90s, and then I was starting to write some sort of nightlife stuff on the side. Then I was unemployed in 2001, along with a lot of San Francisco, and I then started writing more and more. And it really was about 2006 I could sort of predict or see this cocktail renaissance was happening, was really starting to become a thing, and that I sort of should refocus my energy into not so much like, how good is the bar, what's the DJ like, but how are the drinks made and why, and sort of craft cocktail scene that we're all in the thick of today.
So you have been in this space for a while. You've seen the cocktail industry evolve. What do you notice now as sort of some trends going on in the cocktail space, maybe even compared to what you saw 10 years ago from a culture standpoint, from a spirit standpoint? What stands out to you?
Well, really, 10 years ago, we had sort of just hit a critical mass of bars and bartenders who knew that they wanted to do this for a living and knew about the aspects of great cocktail and fresh ingredients and all of that, classic cocktails. And we'd reach enough bars doing it that you could fully focus on it and just sort of live in the world of craft cocktails. Now, 10 years later, when a new bar or restaurant opens, that owner has to make the decision, I'm going to go for it or I'm not doing this cocktail stuff. It's sort of, you have no choice but to address it. And so that's great. And because of it, we've had some interesting changes in how bars operate. A lot of places are opening, trying to be like excellent quality, but more simple and more fun. There's a tiki bar opening in pretty much every city like this year.
And fun is in.
Big in. You mentioned before, blue is back in
Blue
cocktails.
is back. Yeah.
Bright colors, big garnishes, all that stuff. A lot of it influenced by the fun of tiki, but with the quality of tiki drinks from the 1940s or so, rather than the 1980s.
Yes, let's stay as far away from the 1980s as we can. Please.
Let's.
Got it. Okay, no, that makes sense. So I want to start talking about this book you just put out.
Hey, that's a great book.
It is a great book, ladies and gentlemen. I actually did find it a very fascinating and informative read, and very, very easy to get through. I want to talk about that. But first, do you want to explain to everyone sort of what this book is about? Maybe a quick overview?
Sure. Well, it's called Tonic Water, aka G&T WTF, and it's made a sassy title on purpose there to let you know it's a history book. It's the history of the gin and tonic. Largely, it's a history of the tonic, and but really, really thoroughly researched. There's several years worth of research in there, but it's under 100 pages and meant to be fun and funny and full of interesting history about the path, how we got to now from chewing on tree bark.
So as you were researching the gin and tonic for this book, what were some things that you maybe found surprising about the history of the ingredients and the drink itself?
Well, tonic water itself, as we know, is a cure for malaria. It's a quinine in it, and that was really sort of discovered, Columbus, by the Europeans around 1630. And so there's a huge amount of documentation in the history of malaria between 1630 through today, really, because we still don't have a cure. But the part where the gin and tonic comes together is pretty much just a footnote in everybody's malaria book, whereas I wanted it to be the other way around. It's just all a lead up to the drink, which is the greatest creation. So, and along that way, there's so many interesting scientific discoveries. So many people have Nobel Prizes that are the scientists mentioned in the book. Pretty much if you do anything with malaria, you get a Nobel Prize. But that led me on a lot of fun tangents in the book, like the invention of the color mauve was a side effect of trying to create synthetic quinine, and how people figured out gas laws in order to know how carbonation worked and things like that. Like a lot of really fun off-topic topics.
Yeah, you go really deep into all elements of it, which I found really fascinating. And like it was just like, a page or page and two dedicated to each, and managed to cram a lot of detail into those.
Yeah, for every sentence in the book, I probably have pages and pages of research and stuff like that, which I would love to write, the big book of tonic water history. I don't know if any publisher is going to get on board with that, but I'll write it anyway, I think, and we'll see what happens.
What I found interesting was, quinine's relatively bitter flavor, right, in tonic, and so how that became an acquired taste was pretty interesting. It was actually a lot of British people like stationed in India who were getting malaria and often taking it in was one of the reasons why it became a very acquired taste, and they brought it back, right?
Yeah, because you needed to take quinine if you were in India, whether you were Indian or British. But the British tended to take their quinine with refreshing beverages. Over the years, they were drinking with beer, with sherry, often with wine, and so it's not a big surprise that it wound up with gin and the gin and tonic. What's a little surprising is the tonic water itself, the carbonated quinine drink. As we know, it wasn't just for malaria. It was sort of a cure-all for any kind of stomach issue. Sort of, I would say, kind of how some people take ginger ale today to settle their stomach when they're sick. When they were kids.
When you look up like the history of most cocktails, it's usually so-and-so first invented it in the 19th century and they made it at this bar, and it's just someone getting credit for it.
Right, who probably wasn't the first person to do it. Right.
But the story tends to sort of stop there. The gin and tonic's got so many layers to it. It's really fascinating, all the ways that made it, these two things come together to be such a staple of cocktail culture now.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, and it got me really into sort of the history of science of cocktails, as opposed to just the science of cocktails.
Yeah.
Which was great fun, and something I plan to do a lot more of.
Nice.
Sort of research in that, because I can understand that sort of basic science that we all take for granted now.
Right.
But it's a new spin on how to look at the history of cocktails, I think.
Nice. So gin and tonics they seem to be very popular in Europe. Like I went to London and everyone's ordering a gin and tonic. I went to Spain and they serve them in these very elaborate ways.
Right.
Do you have a gin and tonic that you've seen that stands out to you as either the most interesting presentation or maybe the best one you've had?
Well, I was at a global cocktail competition and there was a competitor from Spain, and really the big goblet style gin and tonic.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the Spanish style gin and tonic, we call it. A lot of the reasons it's in that goblet is because all of their ice machines in Spain make great big giant ice cubes, and they wouldn't fit into a small glass. You can only fit a few of them in here, and then you'd have their glassware is smaller, and you wouldn't have enough room for both gin and tonic. But those ice cubes can fit sideways in the big goblet glasses. So that's my theory on why Spain started the Spanish-style gin and tonic.
Makes sense.
Small glasses, big ice.
All comes back to ice.
Yep, sure does. But in this global cocktail competition, the Spanish competitor, it was the speed round, and it's a really, really intense 8 minutes of bartending. But his final drink, he did a gin and tonic, which seemed everyone was doing more complicated drinks, but he did full Spanish style, and there was like 6 garnishes and cinnamon stick lit on fire and everything else presented in the final second of his time. And it was
fun is in, as we said before.
It sure is. Yeah. And that was like a really dramatic finish to that round. And he was actually the guy that won the entire global cocktail competition.
Oh, wow.
As well. So it seared that drink in my mind of that experience.
Nice. So if anyone's interested in the gin and tonic, you absolutely need to read this book. It's fascinating. It's a super quick read. Where can people get this?
Well, you can get that not on every bookstore shelf, unfortunately, but it's available on alcademics.com, my website, as well as you can buy it as an ebook on Amazon for Amazon Kindle.
Okay, great, nice. And where can people find you online aside from alcademics.com?
I'm all over the place, but I'm on Twitter and Instagram as Alcademics is my handle there as well.
Cool, yeah. And he posts really cool clear ice pictures on Instagram, so definitely give him a follow.
Ice prawn.
Ice prawn. Ice prawn, and a lot of mail booze as well.
Yeah. Liquor that came in the mail that day.
Well, cheers, sir. Thank you for stopping by, and thank you for telling us a bit about the history of the gin and tonic and talking about your ice experiments. Super fascinating. You're one of the legends, so appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Do a mic check. I think these bowls should be picking up pretty well.
Well, let's check mine.
I'm asking you an interesting question.
Well, here's a fact about that.
Oh, perfect.
You wouldn't believe it.
That's going viral. Okay.